Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the PhysioSchool Podcast. My name is Reed Vandervluten, and I am joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Cash Mahdi and Anthony Pinto da Costa. Cash, how are we doing today?
Doing okay, just fine. It's a no bones day today. No
No.
bones day today. Noodles fell down. If you guys aren't familiar, there's a dog on TikTok that tells you whether you're gonna have a good day or not. And to be honest, it's pretty damn accurate. So right before we're about to record this podcast, there was an excavator truck that came outside my front lawn and started making a bunch of noise, which is still going on, but luckily not getting picked up through the audio. At least I hope, or otherwise I apologize to your ears for the terrible noise. But yeah, no bones day today.
Well, Anthony, we're just going to have to pull our socks up to work our magic for Cash today. And on that note, how are you doing today?
Yeah, man, I agree. We're gonna have to do our best, but yeah, I'm doing all right. Went for a quick run this morning. It was a bit of a windy one, but every now and then you need that little bit of resistance. But I think where the no bones comes in is when you run out there on a cold day, your voice gets a little hoarse. So if I'm clearing my throat on this podcast, you guys know why.
Hey, fair enough. I wanted to give you kudos as well. Anthony pulled the PT back-to-back hero shift this past weekend. Went clinic Friday night, Halloween party Friday night, hospital shift Saturday morning. Did I get those dates correct?
You got it, man. You got it.
Buddy, as the movement PTs would say, doing God's work out here. Good work. Awesome. Well, in this episode, guys, we will be diving into Anthony's journey to physiotherapy school and ultimately becoming a physiotherapist and what that process looked like for him. So this episode is actually going to kickstart a small series in which each of us will interview the others on their path to becoming a physiotherapist. We hope you can learn from our strategies, obviously capitalize on our mistakes, and ultimately get into physiotherapy school. So I figured let's just dive right in. Anthony, I was wondering if you could start by giving us a brief breakdown of where your interest in physiotherapy stemmed from and what that looked like to you.
For sure, man. For sure. So honestly, it started at a pretty young age. I don't think this was like the main reason why I went in, but this is kind of like that spark of interest, something that kind of put me on to physio. So I remember I think I was around like the age of 8 or 9 at this time. Like I was a young lad for sure, and my nonna. So for those of you who don't know, nonna is grandma in Italian. She was over at our house, and there was a home physiotherapist that was actually over teaching her just a variety of exercises. So my nonna, she has a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. She definitely deals with a lot of pain, a lot of joint mobility issues, which definitely really affects her whole quality of life. But I remember just seeing this physiotherapist come in, and she was just teaching her, just a simple exercise called the wall crawls. Like I know you guys know wall crawls, right? It's just crawling up against that wall to improve that shoulder range of motion, shoulder flexion to be exact, which is just the motion where you're kind of raising your hand in class to ask a question. And I don't know what it was about it, but I was just so intrigued by it. Just as a kid, I was asking all these questions about it. I was doing them with my nonna, and I just thought it was cool. And obviously, what we know now, it's just wall crawls, like just it's a simple exercise. Like, got to relax a little bit here, but there was something cool about it, and I remember just always having that in the back of my head. And I didn't, like I said, didn't act on it, but it was just something that first was my first introduction to PT. So I would say it was definitely that experience.
Nice, nice. And is that what made you want to learn more about the profession itself and
I
pursue?
think eventually, like when I started going through high school and just started learning more about the body, I thought back to that, and I was like, you know what? Let's explore that a little bit, because I saw how much PT helped my nonna with her mobility. Even to this day, helps her so much, and I think, like I mentioned, that's what sparked it, and I think that's one of the many reasons why I chose this profession. I think for a lot of people, I think you guys could probably relate to, physio's not, I think for most people, not something that you just grow up from the womb, like wanting to do. It's something that you kind of arrive at after a few experiences here and there, and self-reflection and exploration into the field. And that was definitely one of those formative experiences for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you just mentioned there. I was curious, what are some other career options or different careers that you considered before settling on that? You mentioned it was from a really young age, so I don't know if that even crossed your mind or not.
For sure, man. So I would say the first thing when I was like 4, I was a huge Godzilla fan, and that was actually the first thing I wanted to be, Godzilla.
Nice.
Realized, by the time I turned 5, I wasn't going to be able to do that, so I had to pivot a little bit. When I was growing up, I was also in Air Cadets at one point, so I actually thought of being a pilot. That was, a dream for a couple of years, and then I pivoted away from that as well. And then when I was in high school, I was really interested in going into history or law. Something with those two. I found that those were a couple subjects that really made me tick. Probably the first time that I was actually getting over an 80% in classes. So I was like, hey, look, I'm pretty good at this. Like I could definitely do something with this, right? So I was thinking, maybe lawyer, maybe being a teacher. I like the idea of being a high school teacher. But honestly, man, when grade 12 rolled around, something just changed. I took that grade 12 kinesiology course / exercise science course, whatever, I know that's a different name at different schools. And you guys know, like when you apply to universities, it's pretty quick into grade 12. So you got to have all your ducks in a row at that point. And honestly, like a few weeks into that course, after learning about the muscles, the joints, ligaments, tendons, insertion, origin, function, innervation, all of that, I was like, man, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to do something with this, right? History and law were just kind of out of the question for me at that point. And I knew I had to start researching some programs because I know I wanted to get into something with kinesiology. So, I was scoping through a bunch of university websites, looked on Western University's website, and I saw that their kinesiology program was one of the few that didn't require you to have all of these hard science courses, right? I didn't take physics, I didn't take chemistry. As soon as grade 10 was done, I was like, I'm just taking bio. Like I like bio. Again, I thought it was more of a hobby for me, something that sparked my interest a little bit, but nothing I wanted to do. Like I didn't want to do anything with it until obviously I got to that grade 12 course. And I was like, okay, look, I got the prerequisites for this program. Let's apply, right? So I obviously went hard that year, and I think it was March of that year rolled around. I got accepted into the kin program at Western. And when I started that, man, it was honestly everything I imagined and more. I started taking courses like psychomotor behavior, physiology, learning more advanced musculoskeletal anatomy. And I was like, hey, the deed is done. Like, this is definitely what I want to do. Again, didn't know exactly. I had to explore a few careers. And that's when, Cash, you were talking about the Nunna experience, right? That eventually came back into my head. And once I started knowing where my interests actually lied, I was like, okay, let's explore that a little bit. So, went and.
So when you're applying for kin in university, were you thinking about career at that point, or were you just trying to get into any program? Because I know a lot of high school students don't know what they want to do in the future, but it sort of seems like you had a bit of a plan back then, even.
Yeah, I would say a little bit. Like I even remember, if I'm recalling this true story, like in grade 12 English, we had to write this poem just about. It was kind of like a vocation poem, right? And I remember at the end of the poem, I said something about being in a healthcare setting in the future, right? So it was very broad, and I knew like kinesiology could take me there, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So I think I had a little bit of a plan, kind of a little bit of an inkling of where I could end up, but I don't think it was super specific. So I just, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do 100% with kinesiology, but I knew I wanted to do something with that. Or else if I didn't, I think I would go back and regret not exploring that a little bit, because something like history and law, that was very comfortable for me. I knew I had a prerequisites to get into almost any program across Canada, but kin was one of those ones where I was like, I was kind of in a little bit more of a box of like a smaller box of programs that I could apply to, because I didn't have those hard science courses. But eventually got in, and I was pretty fortunate that I got into that program.
So
I
like
think
what point? Yeah, go ahead, Reed.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's great going into kin with that mindset as well, because I feel like it opens doors to a lot of other opportunities as well. And of course, you can use that degree to work as well as a registered kinesiologist and so much more. So I was just going to say, like, for those interested or curious about that program, it is a nice one for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. And we did write a blog about it as well. The best programs for physiotherapy, and kin is definitely top of the list there in terms of getting you ready for a career in physiotherapy. Now, a question I want to also ask, because it seems like the interest was cultivated even more in your undergrad. So, at what point did you become, I guess, more serious about pursuing physiotherapy and started to look into what you needed to do to become a physiotherapist?
Mm-hmm. So by the end of my first year, because you take all those like basic foundational courses, I was like, okay, I know I want to do something with this. And you hear a bunch of those careers thrown around in the kin program, like chiro, physio, medicine. So I started looking into all of them, and physio was definitely atop my list because it was one that I knew actually a little bit about from my previous experience, like I said, with my nonna. So I was like, okay, the only way I'm really going to know if this is for me is if I actually go into some type of clinical setting and see what a day in the life of a physio looks like. Right. So at the end of my first year, going into that summer, I walked into a clinic in my hometown in Georgetown. It's a place called Generations Physiotherapy. And, I didn't know what to expect, just walked in there with a resume. I talked to the receptionist and I was like, hey, my name's Anthony. I'm a kin student. Basically just gave the whole rundown. I'm really interested in volunteering here as like a physiotherapy assistant or even just shadowing a physio. Is there a physio here that is available to talk to me right now just about this opportunity? Right. And, knowing how knowing what I know now about how busy private practice physios are, like that was pretty bold of me to just walk in and be like, hey, you got like a second, right? But luckily, he had a gap in his schedule, and he's like, yeah, come on in. So I talked to him, and I basically just told him my intentions, and I was like, look, I want to learn a little bit more about this profession, and if you're willing to take me on, even just I'll do anything you need me to do here. But I'm just happy to be along your side and try and learn as much as I can about the profession. So I was there a couple times a week. I would volunteer in the evenings. I think it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 hours both times, and I was basically just the guy who would set up the modalities, TENS machines, hot packs, ice packs, things like that. Applying ultrasound, helping with therapeutic exercise prescription. Obviously, not prescribing those exercises myself, but just carrying out the prescribed exercises. And honestly, that experience really is what put me on and kind of drove me to learn even more about the profession. And I think, honestly, I was pretty lucky to know really early on that in my undergraduate career that that's what I wanted to pursue. Because when I started looking into requirements on multiple websites, I was like, okay, like I'm glad I know this now because as you guys know, applying to PT school takes a lot of preparation. You gotta work on your application for like pretty much all of your undergraduate years to make sure that you're a good candidate going forward. So that was kind of that experience that really made me decide for sure that I want to do physio.
Nice. And so that was right after your first year that you mentioned, and then I assume you carried that throughout the rest of your undergrad with that experience. What other experiences were you involved with, if you had any to note?
For sure, yeah. So as I continued on in that private practice setting, I knew, like just talking with the physio that I work with, I knew that there were other settings that physiotherapists work in. And I remember he was just telling me about when he was in placements, and he was telling me he was in hospitals and just like working with stroke patients, a variety of individuals with cardiorespiratory conditions. And at the time, like I knew a little bit about physio, but when he was mentioning that stuff, I was like, I didn't even know physios work in hospitals, right? Like I was kind of blindsided by that. But like I mentioned, I knew that I wanted to go into this field, so I had to explore that a little bit as well and see what physios do in other settings so that I could get a full grasp on what this career has to offer. And I knew that was going to be really important for my application as well, because all I kept reading online, whether it was in forums or just some things that I picked up on the websites, is they like applicants with a wide and diverse set of work and volunteer experiences. So in the summer, I think it was going like third year going into fourth year, I took on a work study placement through Western to get into a spinal cord injury rehab unit at Parkwood Institute in London, Ontario. So there I'd go in a few hours a week and I would work with spinal cord injury patients and hook them up to these devices called functional electrical stimulation ergometers, which is essentially just like a lower extremity ergometer that you hook them up to. You put these electrodes on their muscles of their lower legs so that they can basically pedal on these bikes. It's a way that spinal cord injury patients can get some exercise in. And that was a great experience as well. Really immersed myself within the hospital setting that physiotherapists work in. And I thought that was really good to open my eyes to various populations and see how physio is delivered in hospital versus clinic. After that, during that experience, I also knew that physios, they need to keep up with the research, right? As we went throughout our undergrad, we always heard about this thing called evidence-based practice. When we were in physio school, we heard about it probably almost every other lecture, right? And then now as physios, we hear about it like every single day. So I wanted to also know a little bit more about the research process. I obviously got a little bit about that in statistics and research methods courses in undergrad, but I wanted to see it in real life. I wanted to be part of a project and see what the back work looks like. So I was involved in a data collection, or I was a data collector for a spinal cord injury research group at that same hospital. And essentially, I would sift through patient files, look at various spinal cord injury outcome measures, and throw in data so that it could be used in a paper. And honestly, that experience really helped me look at research papers differently now. I don't just see like a publication in front of me. Like I actually understand the work that goes behind that. And I think that's super important for my development as a physio. And then the last experience that I think would be, more physio related was being a student athletic therapist for Western's men's varsity basketball team. There's a tongue twister there. But that was in my fourth year. And spoiler alert, I know you guys are going to hear this when we interview Reed. He also did the same thing for baseball team, which was, I think I can speak for both of us. It was an excellent experience for us to really understand how to work with athletes, how to go about, just doing simple acute injury management and some rehab here and there as well. And that experience definitely prepared me for physio. And that was kind of like the last lock and throw away the key decision on choosing physio. So I would say those were kind of my main PT related experiences that made the final decision for me.
Nice. Now, both of you guys went to Western. So side question here, is there a course that you guys recommend for students who are pursuing physiotherapy to take in Western's undergrad program? Was there one that you're like, this one is a great one for physio?
Reed, you got one? I got one.
Yeah, I think it's the same one probably. It's the injuries course that you can start in second year. Is it 2236?
Yeah,
I want to say.
Yeah,
that one is unbelievable. Like it teaches you from the ground up some of the basic principles of private practice, musculoskeletal physiotherapy. And then once you get into third year and you start to do labs where you learn taping techniques and special tests to diagnose different musculoskeletal injuries and disorders. I mean, a lot of those tests I still use today, even in clinic sometimes. It's exactly what they teach you in physiotherapy school. There were certain labs that we had at Queens in physiotherapy school that I remember Anthony and I finished up, went back to the apartment. We were like, well, we could have just brought our lecture from third year injuries course from Western. It was the exact same thing. Was that what you were thinking of as well, Anthony?
Absolutely, man. No,
Yeah.
Like that's the number one that comes to my head. And honestly, like I still remember that vividly, Reed. Like I remember looking across lab and just seeing you, and we were just kind of like, man, we already kind of know this stuff. Like we did this for like a couple of years already at Western. So we were like pretty well prepared going into physio school. And, I recommend that course 100%.
Yeah. And when I was in physio school, I also noticed that kids who did some sort of athletic injuries course, had some sort of background in it, had a lot easier time when it came to the MSK courses we did in physio school. So if you are planning to pursue physio as a career, those type of courses, we had one at York as well. I think those type of courses definitely give you a leg up when you are in physio school. So I also recommend similar course at York. I don't remember. I've been much further removed from undergrad than you guys, but I'm pretty sure it was called something like athletic injuries as well. So anything you see like that, probably related to physio-esque type stuff.
Oh yeah, Ancient Cities of the Mediterranean, Classics 2500. You don't
Yeah.
need to take that one for physiotherapy school. I'll tell you that. I'll save you some time. Okay, at
Some money.
Western.
Fun
That is.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun course for sure, for sure. But yeah,
But you guys didn't know each other at Western, right? That's what you guys told me, right? You guys didn't know each other, but you graduated the same year?
that's right. Yeah, Anthony and I kind of met during our 4th year when we had that student athletic therapist. We had a course related to
Okay.
that, and that's how we met loosely. But I think we became Facebook friends, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Reed knew me as Anthony. I knew Reed as Reed. And that was like the pretty much the extent of our relationship in undergrad.
But then you guys, I guess, became friends at Queens, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
And like when we got added to the Queen's physio group, when we got accepted, I was looking in the group and I was like, hey, who's accepted here? Maybe there's a mutual friend here. And I shot me to read a message. I was like, hey, man, I recognize you from Western, looking for a roommate. Would you be down to, if you don't have one, would you be down to maybe live with me during our physio school
Oh,
years?
very forward.
Yeah, I
He
went
was
right
basically
for it.
Dinner first or something. Come on.
I got to slide into the DMs.
Yeah.
Reed was actually like, man, like I was actually thinking of asking you too. So it actually worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I
Nice.
wasn't
The
just
rest
being
is
nice
history.
either. Yeah. Yeah, the rest was history for sure.
Yeah.
Look at you
Awesome.
now. Look at you now.
Exactly. Let's get back on track here. So, next question that we had for you, Anthony, is after learning all that you did about the field, like those are some unbelievable experiences. Definitely jealous about the time spent at Parkwood as well. That seemed really neat to be able to have from an undergraduate standpoint as well. So, after learning so much, like what made you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in PT exactly? Like, was it those experiences or was it more to it than just that?
For sure. Yeah. So those experiences definitely helped me learn a lot about myself. And I think I can, like, whenever anybody asks me this question, I'm always like, man, that's such a big question, right? Like, I feel like I can go on forever about it. But I've kind of broken it down to like a few reasons that ultimately just made me say, yes, absolutely this. So I think the first thing that I realized just throughout life and especially during these physio experiences is that I'm definitely a people person. I always like to be around people, like to interact with a variety of different people, and just speaking, having conversations, learning from a bunch of different individuals from different walks of life is something that I love to do, right? And as you guys know, physio is all about that. It's all about that social interaction and those conversations that we have with our patients. We have to be really good at that, and we have to be able to build connections with pretty much strangers, right? Like you have to make them feel comfortable. You have to make sure that you're keeping them well informed about the plan going forward. That all of that is kind of wrapped up into that. And I think my parents, they're definitely both people persons as well. And I think I'm definitely cut from that cloth. I guess that apple didn't fall too far from the tree in that regard. So that I'd say is number one. Second one, I kind of alluded to this earlier with the whole kinesiology interest, but I'm able to apply academic areas of interest to real life. Like that, I'm able to do every single day in the career of physio. So you guys know anatomy and physiology, that is our bread and butter. We have to have a very in-depth specialized knowledge about that stuff. That's why people seek us out. right? And the fact that I can apply that every single day is great. And when I was in grade 12, learning about all that stuff, it was kind of that first time that I actually loved going home and opening up the book and just learning about that stuff. And it's great to be able to do that on a daily basis in my career as well. It really helps me understand that I don't have to go to work; I get to go to work, and it's because of that deep interest in that stuff. And then I would say the next one is just growing up playing sports, right? Sports was great for my overall development as a person. And I saw, as I went through my years, I saw a lot of some of my teammates getting injured. And I saw how much of an effect it had on them. Like, you're almost feel excluded when you can't play. And there's a lot of people who kind of identify with being an athlete at that age. So I was very fortunate not to really have any injuries as I was growing up, but I know how much of an effect it would have had on me had I had injuries that sidelined me. And as I was going through especially my private practice experiences, I saw how much of an effect physio had on athletes who are rehabbing from their injuries, and the fact that we're able to get them back so that they can participate in sports, especially young athletes, is great. And I'm glad I get a hand in doing that as a physio, because like I said, they were basically my life growing up, right? And I'm sure you guys can relate to that as well. Last couple things I think is physio. It helps me help others, right? And I yearn to help others. It's something, again, like something I get from my parents. They're very much the people who will give you the shirt off their back to make sure that you're good. And it's just something that's always been part of my DNA. And when I was, especially at that private practice, going back to that experience, I remember just seeing all those gifts that the physio would get. And I'm like, wow, like this guy's got like a room stacked of like, gift baskets and cards and all these, basically all these thank you gestures. And I was like, this guy actually, he's making a huge impact, right? And obviously, I'm not in it for the gifts. Like let's not take it too far here, boys. But like to see that you've made that much of an impact on somebody, that they feel the need to come and give you this like tangible item, it was awesome to see. And I really saw the value in physio in that regard. And then I think last thing is just lifestyle, right? When I was doing that research experience, being a data collector, I knew then and there, I cannot sit at a desk. I need to be on my feet. I need to be moving. And the lifestyle of a physio is basically just being on your feet, moving, teaching people exercises, and just being physically active all day. And that was me. I'm just not someone who can sit still. I can every now and then. Obviously, we have to when we're charting all of our treatment sessions at the end of the day, which not the funnest part of the job, but one of the most necessary and important parts of the job. And I think physio just fit my lifestyle with that. And compared to other medical careers, right, other careers in the medical field, we work pretty good hours. We can have a life outside of work, and I think physio would definitely be able to provide me with that, and it definitely has. So I would say those are kind of, I know it's a long-winded answer, but those are the main reasons why I ended up just choosing it after learning everything that I learned from those experiences.
Nice. Now, when it was time to finally apply, what steps did you take that you think would be beneficial to share for future physiotherapy applicants who want to apply to physiotherapy? So what did you do to try to get into physio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely lots of steps. Definitely something we harp on in our PT application booster course. If you haven't checked it out on our website for sure. But number one is always going to be planning ahead. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but just take a gander through all of the PhysioSchool websites in Canada that you would potentially be applying to, and look at their requirements, because a lot of these things you have to get over a long period of time, right? So look to see what reference letter, or if a school requires any reference letters, like what's the difference between an academic and professional reference letter. Figure that stuff out, and figure out what what basically qualifies as an academic or professional reference letter. See if a school requires a personal statement, figure out what that is, figure out what you need to do to make yours a good personal statement and one that can stand out. Take a look at GPA requirements, right? What's the cutoff for certain programs? Look at if you need work and volunteer experiences. Sometimes schools require a specific number of volunteer experiences with regards to hours and a specific type of volunteer experience. So take a look at that, see what schools need interviews. Just basically make a huge checklist so that you have everything. Like you're basically just on your P's and Q's, and you can. It's going to be a seamless process for you by the time that you eventually apply. Because I remember just even looking at like the years going by, and I remember it being like 2014. I'm like, man, I'm going to be applying to physio school in 2017. Like that seems way out there, right? That's never going to come. We're in the year 2021 right now, right? Like the time just goes by fast, so it's going to come faster than you think. So definitely plan ahead. Kind of alluding to this earlier as well is one thing that I did is I picked up a bunch of diverse and work and volunteer experiences. So that even includes outside of my PT related experiences that I talked about a little bit. The other ones that I took that were non-PT related experience, which are super important in your application as well, was, I was a lecturer for a concussion club at Western, where I went to local high schools to teach kids about concussions. I knew physios work with individuals who have concussions, so I thought that was going to be a great experience for me as well. I was an orientation week leader in my 4th year, which was also awesome. Definitely helped out with my leadership and communication skills. I was a senior fitness instructor assistant for group exercise classes at a retirement home close by in London as well. And then I was also a coach for athletes with dwarfism. So I got to work with specific populations who have a variety of physical challenges. And I thought that was, really good for my development going into physiotherapy school as well. So definitely pick up on some things that you enjoy and just, build a good application going forward. Some of the other things I did was I built those meaningful connections with people who were in the field, as well as my professors. Like I said, I knew I was going to need reference letters, and basically speaking with them and building good connections with them was definitely going to help me with that. Especially in 3rd and 4th year, I started talking to my professors a lot more. It was more of an intimidating experience for me in my earlier years, and I really stayed away from that. But I knew I needed to kind of break out of my shell a little bit, so I definitely started doing that, and I got great reference letter from one of my professors in my 4th year, which I'm definitely really fortunate about. And then also just speaking with physiotherapists, right? If you want to learn about the field, you got to talk with people who are actually in the field, because they're going to give you the best insight going forward. So definitely build some of those meaningful connections, kind of like I did going forward. Last couple things here. I think I had a good balance between studying smart and studying hard. As you guys know, you need a pretty good GPA to get into physio school. I wouldn't say mine was unbelievable, but it was good enough to get me in. I actually had a 3.72 GPA. And if you guys look at, cutoff scores and what average GPAs are within people who get accepted to physio school, that's definitely a little bit on the lower end, but it was enough to get me in. And I think my experiences kind of elevated me there a little bit. But, nonetheless, I still made sure that I always had the best grades that I could possibly have. So, I would review almost nightly. I would make cue cards, basically the size of like a loaf of bread, just to make sure that I was doing active recall and just doing the best studying techniques to make sure that I was ready for all my exams. And then lastly, I'd say is just learning about the profession. So like I mentioned, I did that throughout my experiences, talk to people, even looking things up online. All of that really helped prepare me for physio school. So, everyone's journey is going to be different, but you guys can kind of use that maybe as a guide, kind of as a soft blueprint to make sure that you're taking the right steps at the right time.
Nice. Lots of great tips there. And definitely, Anthony, you got some really, really good experiences that you were able to draw on in your application as well, just learning about the field. I think through all those different experiences, like you mentioned, you were able to learn so much about different areas of practice in physiotherapy.
Definitely helped me out a lot.
I was curious. I had one question. I'm going to go back a little bit before we get close to wrapping things up here. You'd mentioned sports was a huge part of your development, your growth, your childhood as well. Was there an injury that you had specifically that you had treated through physio that you were, that motivated you to become involved in the profession, or not so much from your end?
So when I was a kid playing sports, no, I wasn't the most injury prone kid, but you may actually remember this, Reed. First week of physio school, first or second week, I played intramural basketball game and I jammed my finger, and it was my index finger on my right hand, my dominant hand. You guys know physios, we use our hands a lot. And this was coming at a time where I was like trying to learn all the skills and physical assessment techniques. And when we were practicing and even we were learning them in lab, man, like my finger was just killing. Like even just chopping vegetables, putting my key into the door, like this thing was bothering me. And like I really started worrying about it. And I remember because we were just starting physio school, I feel like I didn't know, too much on how to rehab that specifically. I actually went to the Queen's Physio Clinic, and shout out to Will Carlson, one of our professors back there. He's one of your graduating classmates. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Was my boy.
One of Cash's classmates. He actually treated me, and I remember just like his words and his demeanor and how he kind of just calmed me down. Just seeing him like even that one time and just talking to him about it afterwards over the coming weeks, like my finger immediately just started feeling better. And honestly, I was like, wow, like what an effect this guy had, right? And I was like, I want to be able to do this for other people in the future. And now that I'm here, I'm going to be able to do that. So that I think was kind of one of those later experiences. I already knew I was going to be a physio, but it kind of motivated me to, really be on top of things throughout physio school so that I could do that for others.
That's wicked. And then a year later, the sprained ankle, but that's a story for another time. And actually, you just go on Anthony's Instagram and YouTube to check that one out. I'm pretty sure you documented that thoroughly.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Anthony, was there anything else you wanted to discuss or go over with regards to your journey? Or Cash, did you have any other questions for Anthony right now?
No other questions. If you have any other final thoughts, anything you want to share with the audience and future applicants, floor is yours.
So one last thing, I'll end you guys off on this story. So going back to my nonna again, this really helped me realize how life kind of comes full circle. Like I was saying, she was doing those wall crawls, right? Back when that home therapist was in our house. And I remember our first OSCE that we had in physio school, which would have been the December of first semester. And for you guys who don't know, OSCE is an objective structured clinical examination. It's just a practical exam that we do where we see standardized patients. I remember my first station, it was something about, improving like the shoulder flexion range of motion of the client that you're seeing. And I'm like, wall crawls. We're doing wall crawls. So I walked into that station and I just taught somebody wall crawls. And I was like, wow, like, look at this experience that I had when I was like 8 or 9. And it just came back like, what is that? Like 15 years later or something like that. And I thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, life comes full circle. And that's how it kind of came full circle for me.
To add to that story, I remember Anthony coming back from that exam and he told me, yeah, I gave wall crawls. And this is how green I was that you guys will find out in the next few episodes. I was like, what is a wall crawl? I had no idea. So yeah, lots of learning along the way, but that's awesome, Anthony. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So that is going to wrap up things for episode 2 of the Physio School podcast. We are so thankful for you guys listening, and we hope you learned something along the way. Anthony, thank you for sharing, of course. If you would like to contact us, please reach out across any social media platform. We're on virtually everything: Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok soon, LinkedIn, Pinterest. I probably missed one, but all of the links are in the show notes. And additionally, the next cohort for the PT application booster course begins November 2021. So if you missed Halloween, you slept through Sunday, that is right now, people. So as we discussed last episode in depth, this course is perfect for those looking to gain the competitive edge when creating their application. And it also contains a full module on Casper Prep. So if you're interested, please reach out to us as soon as possible and we can help you get started. Awesome. Well, guys, episode number 2 is in the books. We'll see you all at the next episode.